Okay, everybody, we'll be starting now. We are Montfort alumni and we are starting to go live now.
Hi everyone and welcome. I would like to welcome everyone who have joined in for our session today on our panel discussion with our PhD scholars, our graduate students. So once again, welcome to our third week of panel discussions titled Call for Academic Enthusiasts. I am Kanika Butoria. I am a psychologist and a researcher. I head the EAP team at Medibuddy and I'm also a program assistant at Recordis. I'm also a research fellow with Mukta Foundation conducting research on intimate partner violence in males. So I personally would like to thank everyone and welcome everyone for joining in. A little bit about the initiative that we have going on over here. So this is an initiative that has been taken up by the Montfort alumni members. We have collaborated and worked really hard to bring you a unique series specifically focusing on exploring career opportunities in the field of psychology and mental health. The panel discussions are with various Montfort alumni who are working in the field will be the core of our discussions. The whole aim of this program is to, curated by the alumni team, is to help you understand and stay informed about the multitude of opportunities out there. We basically want to ask the question that all of us have asked during the period of education. What do we do after we graduate? What do we do? Where do we find our jobs? So along with this, we want to develop a realistic picture of what one can expect in the different professions and different fields, the challenges that are there that come with every field and the live experiences. And hopefully this will aid you in giving you a lot of information about what all you can explore and also help you make a decision later on. So with this, I would like to kickstart the event for third week, the Call for Academic Enthusiasts, a conversation with our PhD scholars. I would firstly like to introduce Vishal. Vishal is our moderator for the event. Thank you so much for joining in. She is a PhD in psychology with 15 years of experience as a therapist. She's also the senior counselor at Silverleaf and a visiting professor at Montfort College. She has many published several papers in academic journals and has conducted several mental health related workshops. She is passionate about making a difference in people's lives, and she comes from an approach that is holistic, integrated with an emphasis in cognitive behavior therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy. Thank you so much, Vishal, for joining in despite the compromising health situations. We are very happy and grateful to have you amongst us today. Now I'll go on to introduce our esteemed panelists that we have. All of them are Montfort College alumni who have taken out their time to help and guide all of us. So first we have with us Lopa. Lopa Mudra is a doctoral candidate at Griffith University, Gold Coast, Australia. And she has demonstrated a history of working in the area of teaching, practice, field research, and has publications in the developmental sector. She also holds an MPhil in psychology from Christ University and is an alumni of Montfort College. Currently, her doctoral work focuses on the mental health of surrogate mothers from marginalized communities living in the abject poverty conditions. Thank you, Lopa, for coming in and welcome once again. Next we have with us is Jessie Peters. Jessie Peters is again alumni of Montfort College, and at the moment she is a PhD, pursuing her PhD at University of Nebraska, Lincoln, USA. Her PhD is in human sciences, and her dissertation focuses on family experiences of women trafficked into commercial sex industry. Thank you so much, Jessie, for coming in. We also have with us Atmika. Atmika is a yoga and a mental health therapist from Mauritius. She has always been interested in the human mind and fell into the ocean of psychology at Montfort College. She started her journey of research in yoga and psychology, and she's currently pursuing her PhD in yogic sciences at S. Vyasa Yoga Institute. She is also a certified yoga and health therapist from Nimans, a certified hypnotherapist from Mind Matters, and a certified yoga trainer from S. Vyasa. Thank you so much for joining us in today. And lastly but not the least, we have with us Aradhna Mohan. She received her BA in psychology, sociology, and economics from Christ University and then went on to finish her master's in Montfort College. She is currently in her second year of the applied psychology PhD program at Southern Illinois University. And here she's an active member in different research labs and is a graduate assistant at the University Core Curriculum Office. Prior to her PhD, she was a counselor at Kaha Mind and at a school in Bangalore. And presently, her research focuses on women's experience in leadership positions and gendered interaction patterns at the workplace. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in and taking in your time. And now I'll hand over the platform to Vishal to take it ahead with our panel discussion. Thank you.
Good evening, panelists, and good evening, the audience. It's so lovely to be here with a bunch of really bright research scholars. I think I would be understating if I didn't make that statement. And it's so lovely to see each of you here. So I think let's just start with a very broad question as to how your journey has been so far. Maybe Lopa could start. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I could. Thank you, Vishal, and thank you to everybody for having us here, actually. So my journey from PhD started in 2018, and it's been a mix of so many things. I literally can't find a single word for it. But yeah, I mean, there was excitement, everything so far in the very beginning, from like moving from India all the way to Australia, and then getting on with work, coming back to India for my field research, and then getting stuck for 2 years in India because Australia closed their borders. I'm still here, but just on my way out. So it's been interesting because I also had we could talk about it a little further down the line, but there were also certain experiences as a person of color in a Western country, and so that has definitely impacted me as a person quite immensely, I would say. But apart from that, I think it's been a learning curve. But more than anything else, I mean, apart from the research that I'm doing, I think it's definitely given me a huge insight into understanding who I really am as a person. So, because you spend so much time on your own, and you go through these, testing times, that you really get to know who you are as a person. So I think in short, I would say that's just a quick overview of my experience so far. So, yeah.
Okay. Who would like to go next?
I can go next.
Yeah, Aradhna.
Yeah. My journey has been incredibly long. I think that's the word that comes to mind. Because I started my application process back in 2015 or 2016 when I wrote my GRE, and then Sudarshan sir, and he was explaining a bit about addiction. And he went a bit in detail about addiction, and I thought, oh, okay, that is what having a dependency is about. Later on, again, sitting in those classes, which most of you know, we had Shrita's class. And there, I remember she taught us about Sankhya philosophy, one of the yoga schools, the yoga philosophies. And this really hit home in a way where I realized, so am I not this body and this mind? There is something a bit beyond this, which is where, for my dissertation in MSc, I studied Surya Namaskar with our friends in Montfort. And I realized that, okay, this is something we could look into, how yoga and psychology could work in hand in hand, in a way, because I realized that the first touch that humankind exemplarily had about psychology was in the Vedas, or in the scriptures, where if you look at stories of Rama and Sage Vashishta, or the one of Arjuna and Krishna, Arjuna was a counselor, Krishna was the counselor, in a way. So Not really led me to read more. And reading is, I think, one of the things that most of us will have in common here. We've read too much, so vast. So this led me to SGRSA, one of the universities that proud themselves on taking yoga in a scientific manner. And there, that's another kind of journey, because it is an ashram. You're not just doing PhD there, you're working on yourself as an individual. So there, with the guidance that I had there, I found myself working in the field of addiction again. So here we are trying to understand how we can help people who are trying to recover from addiction with yoga. And in a way, with my team and I, we're trying to create a novel form of counseling, which we're terming as yogic counseling. Let's see what new research really about that. So first of all, I'm grateful for everyone there. Thank you.
Jesse, how about you?
Okay. First I'll start with my thank you to everybody who's, been part of putting the academic enthusiasts together and giving us this platform to come back to Montfort and share our experiences. So my research or PhD experience, I wouldn't say PhD, but research experience started at Montfort as well. And I think it was a critical conversation with Anne Matthews, because I did a research project with her in my master's. And that's when I got interested. I was like, hey, I want to do more. And I had this conversation with her about, what do I do next? And she was like, hey, what about a PhD? And she kind of gave me the nudge towards it and, would talk to me about it. I think that's where this all started. So I came to the US in 2016. And I would say the application process and all of that, I probably did maybe 40% of the application process online. And then the university reached out saying, okay, how can we help you? What questions do you have? What is not clear? Because I think there was also this language barrier, in the sense that we know English, but then the expectations sometimes are different. The verbiage is different. So that was really helpful. I also had a friend of mine who was applying at the same time. So we would share notes, share our experiences, and talk to each other every evening and oh, what did you do? How did you apply? How did you frame this? So I think that type of brainstorming and applying together helped me quite a bit. And then I would say the first 2 to 3 years were kind of rigorous coursework. And kind of getting used to the US academic system. And then I started getting more involved in research projects, becoming a member of a research lab. So then I could hone in more on one area of research. And that's how I met my current advisor, where I was hey, these are my ideas. And then she shared her expertise that she works with women in the red light districts in Mumbai. And so then we had multiple discussions, and that's how we came up with the dissertation topic. And I was able to travel to India to collect data, which was funded through an internal grant. So now I'm at the tail end of it. So hopefully good things are coming my way soon. Yeah.
Okay. So I was also wondering if each of you knew that you actually wanted to get into research much beforehand, and did you have a clarity of where you're heading and what is the kind of topic that you were interested in much beforehand? Would you like to talk about that?
Sure. Shall I?
Yes. Lopa.
Yeah. So this is interesting, because I think when some of you were speaking, it also made me realize the impact Montfort had in that regard, because I graduated from Montfort in 2009, went ahead and did an MPhil and everything. But I always knew somewhere in the back of my mind that I would have to do a PhD. But by the time I got into a PhD, it was 2018. So, almost 10 years down the line, right? I knew it, but I just didn't know what was going to be my topic, because I just never felt passionate enough about something. So my master's research was in the area of organizational behavior. My MPhil was in animal assisted therapy in autism, and and somehow the topic of surrogacy and infertility in general, all of that just came, like it sort of fell on my lap, and I got extremely passionate very quick, and I was like, if I'm doing so much work otherwise, because I was working for these two other projects while working in Montfort for these other professors from the US. And I was like, yeah, I know so much now from 2014 until 2018, about 4 years of background research. So that sort of propelled me into a PhD. But I think what happens in general is that, if you think that you want to get into an academic life, you're just forcing yourself sometimes to get into something without really knowing whether you're passionate or not about it. And some of us are, and some of us aren't. So it's also just about finding that topic which you will be married to, if not at least 3 years, until you guys can part ways, and a minimum of 3 years. So you really, really have to figure that out, before you jump into it, because that's at least what I think, and I don't know if you guys think similarly as well.
Oh, sorry, Jessie, go on.
No, that's fine. I was just going to say I agree too, because, it takes a while before you can be like, this is what I want to zone in on. In my case, I would say, like, when I had initially applied, I had applied for a second master's, and it was during the Skype interview is where they, one of the professors was like, hey, the stuff that you want to do, the things that you're saying sounds more like a PhD scholar. And considering that you already have a master's, you should just go take the next step and do that, and it sounds like you want to be in academia and stuff like that. So I think it's other people, like my mentors, my professors, who saw it in me before I did, and who kind of were like, hey, you know what, we see your face light up when you talk about this, so we're going to pull you into this type of thing. I would say even with the topic, it was I went in with an initial idea, but then I did not know how that would span out. And so then I had met, there was a lot of conversations with different professors to see how they could guide me and what would be feasible. So I think you need to have some idea, but also a little bit of flexibility to see how you can, in a sense, survive the system, and then kind of commit to it. And I always try to think of it like a love-hate relationship, like Lopa, you said, like a marriage, but it's like there are days when you are like, oh, this is amazing, and then there are days where you question yourself, and that's absolutely normal, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to quickly add on to that as well, because what you said really, it makes so much sense. Even with me, and what I've noticed is that I have my broader interest is in understanding women's experiences and how the system kind of influences her and her behavior and her actions, right? But my topics I've always had to mold it slightly based on what my advisor wants to do as well. And this goes back to even Montfort, where I worked with Vishal, and her research interest was in the area of relationships. And I had to mold that to fit, how women maintain patriarchy in their relationships. And now it's my current advisor's interests are in the field of leadership and workplace experiences. So I know that my larger interest is understanding women and how they actually navigate the system, because it's so hard to break it at this point, right? It is possible, but it will take time. But it's again also, like Jessie mentioned, you kind of you mold your research interest and kind of make it fit what your advisor wants to do as well. So that's,
I think it's very well said what the three participants have pointed out. I'm very much on the same line. I want to add though that I think not just for me, but for many other of my colleagues and friends in my PhD journey is a lot of self-doubt. So when I finished MSc, I didn't have such clarity on what research was, because what I did in my MSc and what it is now, there's a vast array of things that we didn't know about. So the self-doubt, just to say that I remember thinking to myself, but statistics, can I manage this? I knew I had struggled a lot. Then realized that no, you can appoint a statistician to deal with things that you cannot work with. So initially it started with a lot of self-doubt and not really knowing what research is, what being a PhD scholar is about. Until now I'm still gravitating towards this knowledge, but just to say that, yeah, there will be doubt and you just need to jump into it. And having an anchoring understanding of what I want to study and what is my reason for studying it. That's very important. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it leads me to another question, do you think you have to be a certain kind of a person, or you've got to be a certain material, so to say, to crack and, go through this enormous task?
You should be ready to ugly cry by yourself.
Yes.
Yes, you should be okay with that, and that if that becomes your new normal, you shouldn't be worried too much, I would say. I mean, yeah, but
Right.
I think it in a way I would say it does take a certain amount of grit. And also somebody who is able to hold on to something for long enough. Because to be honest, I think there are more testing days than these really flowery, beautiful days. To the extent that even when your supervisor sometimes says something really good about like your writing and you're still like reading it over and over, you're like, did I read it right? Because that amount of self-doubt, all of that really, really oozes out of you, by the end of it. So I think, somebody who is able to, keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that, it's like you have your crying days, but the thing is to get up the next day and keep at it, and not like give up. I would also say it also helps like when you have peers to speak to about it who've had similar experiences, or people who've gone through this before. And I think everybody will say that that is absolutely expected. Like if you didn't question yourself, then you're probably not having the real PhD experience. And it's more like on one track, it's, you're thinking about your research. On the other track, you're really getting to know about yourself. And not everything is, as pretty as you thought it was. So, so I think you get really comfortable with yourself and just doing things on your own. I would say it also takes a person who takes initiative for themselves. Because sometimes education systems can be like where it's driven by the teacher, but PhD is a program where you have to be in the driver's seat, and how you take it is what you make out of it. So it's totally in your hands most of the time, I'd say. I'm just thinking about Aradhana's point too, where you kind of have to adjust it to what your advisor is saying a little bit, but like a majority is on how you drive it.
Absolutely. Like Rupa and Jessica said, perseverance, like you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and being able to lift yourself up on those days when you really just can't sometimes, but you still have to, right? Some days are good, many days are not, and most days you're just plateauing. And you don't know what's happening, you don't know if you're doing the right thing, you don't know if you're doing the wrong thing, you're just doing your work. And I think what I have really learned, and it's a really important lesson, is that everybody's journey is different, and you should never compare yourself to other PhD candidates, right? It's everyone's journey is so different, but know that you are doing your work and you're doing it in your time, and you just have to keep at it.
I think the fact that we have 4 or 5 women of diversity right here in front of us shows us, Vishal, that you don't have a particular personality fit in order to do a PhD. I would rather say that you become a PhD scholar. So I can say I am an optimistic person, but I became
a PhD scholar. So along the journey, you take in these little qualities. You learn to, wake up at 4 a.m. and start writing such things, and sleep only for 4 to 5 hours because you have to juggle things. So it's a process of, again, coming back to the self-discovery. You realize that along your second, third year that, no, I will not be give up on this little, it becomes your child. Your PhD work, your study becomes your little child. So why would you give up on your child? So it's a process of becoming, I would say.
This whole thing about waking up at 4 a.m., it still scares me because I've never done it. And I'm like, oh my god, there are other students doing that.
Yeah, it's a phase where you basically don't fall asleep. So you're like, why am I sleeping when I could be doing some writing?
Yes, I'd rather be reading the paper, yes.
You don't wake up to write, you just don't sleep. So. Very true. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just go to some challenges that you all might have experienced in terms of either the process itself or the admission process, or any tips that you have for the audience, to those who are interested in pursuing something like this.
I can jump in if that okay. All right, so I think with the application process, I think people do it differently. And so one way of doing it is, like, say, if you know what you want to study, you can try to find professors who are experts in that field, and try to have conversations with them to see where the research is at, where they want to take it forward, right? And then kind of see if it lines up to work together. Yeah. And I think the other way people do it is they look at the university as a whole to see the university standing and how they'll position you in the future, and kind of go with that. And I think the third way to look at it is like the funding aspect, especially if you're trying to do this in a different country, because there's like so many additional costs that come with it that you don't see it at the forefront, and it's really overwhelming. So kind of like looking at that and kind of like weighing out of your options as to, hey, is this like, kind of bringing things to perspective, right? And seeing what you absolutely need and what you cannot do without. In my case, I think I did like a combination of I guess rating the universities and contacting professors. So I would just email them and say, hey, I'm interested in these topics, and I see that 2 of those line up with what you're doing, but I don't know exactly what it is. Because even when people say parenting, right, it could be parenting with a specific population, it could be parent and teacher communication, and it's very nuanced. So as I think it again goes to having those discussions with them, and then after that, like once you do align with a professor, then I think the university will, like, it's more easier to do the paperwork after that, because then it's not like you're funneling in, but you already did the specific piece of it, and then you're doing the general paperwork. Yeah. I hope I explained that well and that makes sense, but yeah.
Anybody else wants to add?
Yeah, Aradhana, do you want to go?
No, I don't know why it keeps doing that, keeps popping up. Is there some kind of background noise that
No. That's fine. So yeah, I think what Jessie said, like the 3 ways, it's definitely the 3 prominent ways I would say to go ahead with figuring out what you want to do with your PhD. I mean, where, how, under whom, and all of that, because these are very, very important questions as well. I mean, I'm not too sure how it works exactly in an Indian institute, like, with regards to funding and everything. However, if you're going abroad, obviously that becomes a big part of your decision. And it's quite a bit of money. So again, there are funds available from the universities. There are also funds available from your own country of origin. So India, for example, will also have different funds offered for you to go and do your studies abroad. So it's also up to you to look up all these available funds that are out there, and I think when you talk about challenges, the thing is there are few things that really help you in terms of getting your application forward. For instance, having publications is huge. It's like it carries a huge weightage with your PhD application. So if you have had publications in peer-reviewed journals, that's a definite it gives you a jump if, compared to others. Obviously you have all other things like with regards to IELTS or TOEFL. There are some organizations, some institutions which also accept others. And then it's also to do with where you're going, and sometimes if you feel like you might get homesick or whatever, figuring out whether there's a community around you that you might want to pop in every so often when you do feel like you want to see people like you. Because sometimes, for example, the city I am in, it's very, very white, and so it's difficult sometimes to sort of see people like me, and it doesn't really affect in general, but on like days of festivals or whatever, I'm just like I miss India that additional bit, right? Or even finding food, for instance, things like that. So these are little things that you might want to look into while making your applications as well. I had a challenge that I thought of, but I completely lost it right now. But it'll come back to me hopefully. In the meanwhile, if somebody else wants to take over,
Yeah, sure, Lopa.
In addition to the application process, which is of course it's a challenge. But once I got here, at least what I faced was this constant feeling that everybody knows more than I do. Right? It's like a constant comparison, or like it's almost like imposter syndrome. That's something that I went through, and yes, the process here is a lot more rigorous, but that doesn't mean that I don't, right? So it was just like constantly reminding myself that yes, I am good enough, I'm here because of what I did. But again, I still have to remind myself of that sometimes, because it feels like the people here have so much more experience in terms of research, or they're undergraduate and more experience. But we have our own skills, and they will be put to use at some point. And so it's just about reminding yourself that you are here because you're good.
I have to point out the big elephant in the room, which is COVID-19. I think that has been the biggest challenge for each of us here, where you realize that this PhD journey, is not at all linear. It is a bumpy ride. All right, so adapting. So the challenges will be here and numerous. Every day will become a challenge where, not getting your guide. My guide suffered from COVID-19 and was terminally ill, and I had to change guide at my second year, I think, where everything was ready and changes had to be done. That is one example. Each of you would have your own examples to add up, where every day there is a challenge facing you, when you realize that it's just another one. There will be another one, and you keep on going on with that journey. So the challenges are numerous. I think we just learn to become resilient in a way, and you wake up the next day, sit on your laptop and read. As simple as that times. Yeah.
So I have another question. I know it is a lonely process, but what actually keeps you going at the end of the day? What actually motivates you guys?
Well, I have a list in front of me which I go through pretty often, because there have been days in the past, especially actually going back to your earlier question, that's something that I can just tie it together. You should also look with regards to like as people of color, we'll also have to look at aspects like racism quite quite intensely because sometimes what you think is quite normal might not be, and it might be one of the reasons that's actually it's sort of a roadblock for you. So what you think is, oh, I'm not good enough, and all of this, but like what everybody has said, or imposter syndrome or COVID-19 or anything else that comes together. But if you have this one person who is supposed to be your everything for that journey, lands up being racist or doesn't make you feel comfortable enough, I think it can be quite quite a situation for you. So also knowing that that's not okay, and if ever that happens, that you can speak up, you need to speak up, and you need to make sure that those people are moved out of your advisory team basically. So knowing that it's okay to do that as well. Going back now, I think so I have a list of 10 reasons why I started, and on days where it's quite challenging, I often go back to it, and it really helps me just know, okay, this is what I really want, for example for my future or whatever. Something as trivial as maybe, I want to be Dr. So-and-so, right? Or my name, PhD, whatever. Something as simple as that also. Just put it down, because sometimes it really helps you to keep going. So I think despite it being a very lonely journey, that has helped me in a way. Obviously other mindfulness practices and things like that, again, which I've incorporated over the years. Getting to know who are you in at the very crux of it. I think there's no better way to get to know yourself than a PhD experience. What do you prefer, what do you don't, all of it put together. So I think whether I'm okay with hanging out with people, for instance, or not, does meeting people help me or give me more anxiety? So things like that, I would say.
For me, what's kept me going, or that was a question, right, Vishal? What keeps you?
Yes.
It's just taking some time out for myself, and I feel like that's so important. Especially taking that time out for yourself and not feeling guilty about not getting the work done in that time. That's such a struggle, right? Because I tell myself, okay, Saturday I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to go grocery shopping and do my own thing, and not feel guilty about it, right? Because you're constantly being again watching other people work when you're not, and then you're like, am I supposed to be working now? So taking time out for yourself, doing things that you like, taking the time out to meet people, because like you said, it is a lonely journey. So making sure you have that support system. For me, it would be calling my family, because they really help, and my friends from back home. So those are the things. Just make sure I know work is supposed to be, as a PhD student, you are doing research on something that you like and want to pursue. But sometimes it is work, right? It is something that you like doing, but it is work. So take that time out for yourself and self-care. Self-care.
Do you want to go with her?
Thanks, Jyoti. I think we get comfortable being lonely. I think that's a point that's quite beautiful also, where I remember spending 2 days without opening my mouth when I was in India, during the peak of COVID-19, but I didn't have much of internet connection to speak to my family. And I realized that silence, it is just you. You're not meeting your neighbor. There is no neighbor because they've all moved to their hometown. And yes, it is okay liking the person who you are. Because as Lupa said, there's no one who knows you better than yourself. But that's one point, being comfortable with your lonely process. One. Secondly, something that helped me, especially when I moved to Mauritius for my data collection field study, I realized that we have more than one identity, more than one mask, and fulfilling those dharma, your sense of responsibility for these other masks, faces that you have, identities that you have, helps. So if I think of my day as a woman, I am not just a PhD scholar. I am a friend. I am a dog lover. I have kids I like to play with. I have my clients, my patients, whom I have an amount of responsibility to pay to. So a kind of balance, that's what I want to bring about, that you do not end up just being in a room only carrying out research, because the moment you step out with a fresher mind, so for me painting is, I think it is my go-to, and painting is it's not just a hobby, it's a way of channelizing that energy that gets somehow restrained inside ourselves. When you're in only one frame of mind rather, with your research topic, you see only this. There was a time when I was dreaming of addicts, kind of thing. I stepped out, went out and drew. So taking, as most of you, I think Aradhana pointed out, taking time for yourself, having those few people, very few close people who generate energy, some kind of with whom you can flow with. So yes, carrying different kinds of responsibilities to those masks that we have. Also.
Okay. That was so beautifully said by the three of you. I'm like, oh, okay, what am I at? No, but I could relate to what all of you said in terms of like, you know what, one call to my parents, they'll remind me why I'm doing what I'm doing. and that's like more than enough. Like some, you just get down, they might not understand the PhD process of it, but the reason why you took this next step in this phase of your life, right? And so I think it's really important to have a very good support system who root for you constantly, irrespective of what kind of day you're having. Because I think a common thread that we share is that we question ourselves a lot. So we kind of need other people to be like, hey, you're doing awesome, and have that, see that, okay, you know what, okay, there is hope, and again, like getting up. I would also say, because it's the part of like homesickness when you don't have an option to travel back as much, right? So trying to create a family wherever you are at, like an academic family, or like say, and you need like different kinds of families, and it's in the sense that you need an academic family to help you support in certain ways, to help you guide to take the next steps, and you also need a family which has nothing to do with academia, to kind of like take you away from that, so they don't ask you questions about, oh, did you submit your proposal? Oh, how did your comprehensive go? You don't want some people asking you that. Like in some spaces, all you want to do is just talk about what the recent movie, did you watch Spider-Man? Like that's all you want to talk about, right? So I think the process is so constantly in your head that sometimes you have to like remove yourself out of it, and start enjoying little things like how Aradhana and Atmika said, like painting, or just even doing groceries. That becomes like a ritual that that takes your mind off things. So you have to do things that are more in a sense like more mundane, or you're not thinking about it as much, so that when you get back to it, you have you've refreshed, and you look at it with a little bit of a newer perspective.
If I may add something else, is I think we don't speak enough about having a research team. For me, my research teams are my friends at my university, and we, I think it's 4 of us. We have a diverse topic. Things that we interest us in research is very diverse. Some of us are working on sickle cell anemia. Me, it's addicts, another one PTSD, children. So it's diverse. But we have this kind of relationship. I want to call it a relationship, if not friendship, where we support each other. We have to be each other's support, because there are days where you just want to tell someone, hey man, I can't read this paper. Can we sit together, just brainstorm about what they're talking about in this paper? the guy doing sickle cell anemia sits with me, we discuss, and we find out that it's a wonderful paper. So sometimes each of us, maybe 4 of us, 5 of us here, could be helping each other just by giving that little nudge. So that peer support, I think, is fundamental in this journey.
And I think it also adds to your own PhD as well, like, while it also takes you away, because I remember this one time where I was having a conversation with somebody who was in a completely different school, and we were just having a gelato, and we were just talking about our methodologies at that point in time. We were quite early on, and I was telling him that this is how I'm thinking of doing this, but looks like this theory won't really fit what I'm trying to explain. So I'm also considering this. And then, like, after a few seconds, like, it was quiet for a while, and then he said, I think it's going to work for mine, right? So, and he had no idea about this particular theory at all. But just like you're having we are sort of outside not doing work, but we were also talking about work. So I think because it really makes you like a racehorse with your blinders on. So just talking to anybody else, like sometimes even talking to somebody who's so away from my field, like a family member or something, or a friend or whatever, when I tell them what my research is about, they tell me something and I'm like, I can't believe I've been doing this work for the last 7 years and I never thought of this, because it's that fresh perspective that they bring in. I think it's so important as well. So, while you're also, taking care of yourself, moving away and everything, it might also just give you fresh perspectives too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think from all the conversations so far, you guys have covered what I'm about to ask. But if you feel like filling in something, I mean, is it even possible to have a work-life balance in the true sense when you're in this process? And what exactly can you expect these years when it's all papers around you?
I think you have to create your work-life balance. Like it doesn't exist. You have to make it. I was speaking to someone recently, and he was like, I'm excited. Only 3 more hours until we're done for the day, and I'm like, you're done. I can't imagine a life where you're done at 5 or 6. You don't you have to create that for yourself and make sure you do it for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, my fellow desk scholar was this super cool Aussie girl, and she was always away for like music festivals and stuff like that, whereas I was this person who was ready to come into work even on Saturday and Sundays. So I think that was a huge learning curve for me, because I thought that I needed to do this every day, whether or not I was productive. But just this thought that I needed to sit in front of my computer, have everything in front of me. I might be in a complete YouTube spiral, but I was in my office. So I think what Aradhana said is so important, because you need to carve that out, because it also tells you, okay, this time you're out of here, so you need to finish this before this time, So there's no spillover. And creating a life for yourself outside of an identity outside of work as well, So you're a friend, or you're a partner, you're a whatever, anything. You're a dancer, you're something. So keeping those things in, and keeping your hobbies intact, I would say. Recently, I was reading. I think it was a meme, to be honest, but it was basically to do with like how we sort of don't remember what our hobbies were. So like what we like, for example, like what do you want for food even, because you're so used to just maybe doing something really quickly, or you go to a university, whatever, and then you get free food, so you don't really know what you like. So just making sure that you keep these things alive for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, they sound like little things, but I think they go a long way.
Exactly.
And I would say just because it's a different culture, right? Because it looks like all of us are out of India. Because in some sense, at least when I was doing coursework, I felt like my day was more outlined, because I know that 9 to 10 I'm going to be in a class, 10 to 11 I have a break, so I'm going to try to catch up with homework, 11 to 12 another class, lunch, and then to be a grad assistant for like the next 3 hours, and then I know that okay, I hit everything that I set out to do today and I'm good. But once you're done with coursework, I think that's when you need to really start creating your own timetable and stick to it, because then it's so easy to get pulled like 10 different ways. There's always like an email that comes and says that this needs to be done today, or I need this right away type of thing, which will pull you away. So even like turning off notifications on your phone, turning off notifications on your email, to just sit in and do what you're supposed to do that hour, I think that goes a long way. So that definitely was a learning curve for me, because before my day was planned for me by somebody else, and now I have to do it by myself. And it's kind of like disciplining yourself to stick to it.
Also communicating that, I would say, right, Jessie? Communicating that to your team members, to your professors, to everybody, telling them that, I'm not available on, even if it's just one day per week, that there's no way you're going to get to something on that particular day, I think.
For sure, because there's this weight saying that how can you say no to your professors or to your peer members, because then it shows that you're not doing your part for the team, right? Especially if you're doing a paper and you're like, hey, I take Fridays off, so I'm not going to be able to get this to you by then. You think it comes across as that, but you can be very professional about it and say that, hey, you know what, I know I'm not going to be able to get to you, so I don't want to give you any false hope, but let me get this to you on Monday. And it's okay to say that. And I think work-life balance, like, Lopa, I was just thinking about, like, when you were talking about how you're, the person you shared office space with was, she would be away, and it just looks different for different people, right? Because you're absolutely right. Sometimes you feel guilty doing other things, so you want to be in your office, because now that you've learned to be comfortable with yourself, that's where you're most comfortable in. Like, some days I'm uncomfortable if it's like 9 a.m. and I'm at home, and I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I still here? Like, this is not my natural surrounding. By 7:30 I need to get out. And then I go to the office, I've had YouTube binges, I've had Netflix binges, I've just done online shopping, but I feel more comfortable. Like, I feel more like safe from 9 to 5 in the office. And then again, it's like this sense of like urgency to be somewhere else. So I think it just looks different for different people too.
A lot in line with what Jessie is saying is that discipline. I think we're all talking about that, where there would be days where you're not in the mood to, work, but there is work to be done, and I think that's okay also. Just like there are days where maybe I don't want to shower, simple as that. I don't want to wash my hair, but I do it. So that's one thing. Another thing which has helped me is the discipline, self-discipline, in the sense, if I tell you, when I wake up, initially, especially when I was in India, I would wake up thinking, okay, I have this much of work pending for my PhD work, this paper has yet to be reviewed, etc. It goes on the list. Little by little, just there had to be a change, and that change occurred with waking up and thinking, what can I do for myself today? In that sense, so I wake up, I do yoga practice, I take care of my plants, I say hi to my parents, something as basic as that. Messaging, taking care of someone else except from yourself for a while. That's a good sense of discipline that has helped. And then getting in that workspace. So having a workspace has helped. So you're in my workspace, I welcome you in my workspace. But once I step out, it is another space. So that has helped. And that kind of discipline, when I have to do my work, it's here. Sometimes it's maybe outside in the garden, but structure is something that is quite helpful with that balance.
I think I'll also add, because when you were speaking, I think it just struck me. I think the way you measure your day is different. Because initially the way I would measure it is that this needs to get done. And I've always noticed 99% of the time when I think I'll take an hour to do something, it probably takes me 5 hours to do that. And I don't even get through all of it, but I'm at it for 5 hours. So I think the way you measure your days, have I made progress on something from yesterday? And you measure that progress, then did I finish my homework, or did I finish like reviewing an article in 30 minutes? So because it's just that some articles are difficult to read, and you're not able to like understand them in the first read. You have to keep going through them over. So I think that kind of needs to change too, because initially I would get super frustrated with myself, because I would have these really lofty goals on like, oh, this is how it's going to look. I'm going to check everything I have. And at the end of the day, feel super frustrated that I didn't even go through like 3 things on my list, right? So breaking it down to like really small steps and measuring progress and how much time you've spent on it, I think helps with that too.
Yeah. Kanika, do you think we should pause here for so that we can take questions from the audience?
Oh yeah, I think we definitely can. We do have a lot of questions coming in. So firstly, yeah, I think everyone's like taken a lot of key things from everything that we have spoken about, and they've just like brainstormed and come back with their own doubts. So firstly, the thing is, so in the starting we had a little bit of a technical issue, so we lost Aradhana's portion where she was talking about her progress of the grad application to the grad school and your area of research. So if you could just please just repeat that bit, and then we can go on with the rest of the questions that we have.
Do you mean my journey?
Yeah, your journey to grad school, and how you came about to choose your research and how you're in it right now.
Okay. Wow. I'm just like, what did I say? I do remember saying that my journey has been really long, and that I started way back in 2016, and I started with the basics like the PhD and all of that, and that's when I realized I don't have, because in the US you need 4 years of undergrad, and I only had 3, and that's how I ended up in Montfort. Best experience, best decision of my life, and and my current research interest is in the area of women's experiences in the workplace and leadership position. I think that covers it. I can't remember, Kanika, anymore. What it?
No, I think that's completely all right. Thank you for just reiterating it once again. So yeah, we have a question, and I think it's stemming from where all of you discussed of your PhD being your child. So in the process, you can get very attached to your research, and obviously the research you have. Have you ever come across any research bias, and how do you work around it?
100% yes. It's like you're trying to steer your research a certain way, and if it is something where you're looking at a hypothesis, for example, it goes the other way, obviously generates a lot of stress. For me, it was where I'm doing my research, and then there were research being published about that topic while I'm doing my research. So you're like, now what was the need for my research really? So, and you can't control these things, right? This will happen. You don't declare to the world that, hey, I'm doing this, I call dibs, nobody take this up, right? So it will happen. It's just about how you deal with it, and then you figure out, you read through, you figure out what's common, what's not, how's your research different, and then you move on. So I think things like that will always be. It's just about how you take a step back and figure out, okay, how do I recalibrate and move on?
Okay. So thank you for that. So we have another question about the application and the prerequisites for applying to grad school in US or Australia. And also a little bit about the scholarships and the fundings that might be available in the respective countries.
It's a rigorous process, right? So I go to school in the US, and I remember I had to take my GRE, I had to take my TOEFL twice because it's only valid for a year, the scores are only valid for a year. But I think the biggest and most important step is to get in touch with your advisor and who you want to work with. Ask them if they're taking advices for the year, because even if your application is like perfect and your advisor is not taking anybody, next year, that there's no point, right? You're not going to get any. Making sure your research aligns with her or his or their research interest, because you're going to be working closely with this person for the next 4, 5, 6 years, and you want to make sure you have a good rapport with them. And looking at the process, I can't think of anything right now, but that was overall your statement of purpose. That is really important, right? You have to tailor that, see how you can, how you will help the university and how the university will help you. That's what comes to my mind right now. But Lopa, I know she mentioned.
I want to add something very basic. Is grammar. Please avoid grammatical error when submitting documents to universities and grants. And I've seen some myself, and I think that's the first impression that you give. Let's try to make that the best as much as we can. And secondly is the cover letter. So first was your cover letter, having a good language, telling how novel, what are you bringing, as you said, Aradhna, what are you bringing novel, and why you? Something as simple as why they should be choosing you. Secondly, a very important thing that I learned very recently is that there are so many scholarships available, so many grants available, especially for women, for people from Africa, for people in India. So research, find things, talk to people, talk to embassies. I think these are the first steps that aren't told to us, which I wish myself I knew. So that's my contribution.
Absolutely, I think you're right there, and because I think what Atmika is also trying to, do correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're trying to also say is that sometimes while you're trying to take care of the grammar and everything, make sure that it's your words, because you might write this prolific, statement of purpose and cover letter, whatever, but that's not your words, and you get out there based on the languaging that you have put out there, and you'll really feel the pressure for being selected for something that you did write. So, because clearly they would have chosen you based on that. So also make sure that it's your words, be honest with it, don't get somebody else to do it, because it really is a process. And it's perfectly fine, because our writing style is quite different compared to other countries, and to be honest, academic writing is something that needs to be learned, so it doesn't just come naturally to you. You write and read and write and read and write, and then you just get it. So you might be great at English, but for example, I keep getting the feedback that I am very expressive with my writing. So my words are emotive, right? So whereas in academic writing, you shouldn't be doing that. So it basically shows my bias quite openly. So again, something to learn and something to keep up. So with regard to the application procedure, I think it is similar to what Aradhna had mentioned. There was a huge impetus given to with my funding, because I had publications, and without publications, it might be difficult getting funding. So again, talking to professors, very good way to get there. Making sure you read their research, tell them that yes, you are also interested in their research, and that it might align with their work or something. Asking them if they have personal fundings, because sometimes the professors have fundings, and then they can get you on with that. Or whether the university in general has funding separately, and so on and so forth. So and again, the basics like your exams, your your statement of purpose, your recommendation letters. Get your recommenders to be as expressive as possible with regards to showcasing your skill sets. So that helps a lot as well.
I think just like a few maybe nuances to add to what everything that's being said. Is that true? Like, and this might sound crude like in the beginning, because at least in my experience, like I struggle talking about money, and what I am committing to and what is being committed on what is the bargain, right? And I would say just ask the questions. Just try to get on a Skype call or just try through email, be as explicit as you can. And there's nothing to be shy about, really. Like, and I cannot stress that enough. Just ask the questions that you have, because there are a lot of misconceptions when you're thinking about things, when you're reading it, like just because the language is different, the way people express themselves is difficult. And so just think like, hey, is this what you said? Because this is what I understood. Okay, can you say yes or no to what I understood? And even that goes a long way, because it would really affect your experience if you traveled across countries and to figure out that what you understood is not what the situation is. Be it on the research front, be it on your say living situation, be it with the funding piece of it, right? And so it's okay to ask what percentage is going to be covered, how is this going to be covered. And I know that a lot of universities in the US work with the fall and spring concept, so the summer is usually kind of on your own. So even asking that, how am I going to be supported during the summer, gives you an idea to be prepared for it, right? Like, how do I try to find jobs on campus, and things like that. So it's always just ask the questions and do not hesitate. I think that's the best way to move forward. And I think the other thing I would say is, initially when you do this process, because it's already stressful, you don't want to offend anybody, you don't want to get on the wrong foot with anybody, and you try to say a lot of things that you think people want to hear, right? Like, for instance, if your professor said, hey, I think you should do a research on this, and you're like, how can I disagree to that? And you would say yes, but internally there's this conflict that's not what I want to do, but because she's going to support me, I want to say yes so that I can get my foot in the door. With personal experience, I think that does you more harm than good in the long run. It's okay to say that, hey, I am not completely 100% in line with what you're saying. I can get to it like a 10%, or explain how much you are convinced with it. And I think professors appreciate that you're being straightforward and not just being a yes person, but kind of critically thinking, and then it shows them that you are passionate about what you're doing than just doing it for the sake of getting it done. So I think that goes a long way too. And it's easy to get in that train of yes, and then they start thinking, hey, is this person really doing it because they want to, or just because I said so? And that feeds into your grit, right? Because on the days when you question why you're doing what you're doing, I'm just doing it because she said so. And that's not helpful.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Yep.
So we have another question about, what are the skills that you would say a candidate must have for pursuing a PhD? Are there any tools or online portals they'd recommend to aspiring PhD scholars?
YouTube is filled with this now, so there are so many courses, even for example to do with analysis, for example. So because right now I'm doing that often. Sometimes you read paper after paper, but you just need that one-on-one teaching because you're used to that perhaps. So there's so many videos out there that you can get on to learn so much about the skill sets, for example, necessary, which is going to be research-based mostly, unless you're doing a PhD, which is going to be quite different. I have no idea about that, so we'll speak. But yeah, I think a lot of resources are out there for you these days, and you can basically just teach yourself to do a hell lot of things as well. Yeah. And then I think the curiosity to learn is something quite important, and just that learner attitude because just going and being like, yeah, can you teach me how to do this? Can something as simple as maybe, putting your signature at the bottom of your email, right? Like, so you either research it on YouTube, go like, oh, how do I put it there? And if you're somebody who needs somebody to teach you, just ask somebody, your peers, your professor, whatever. Like whatever it is, as something as small as that, basically. So just that having that attitude that I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. So I think that really takes you a long way. And the sooner the better.
That was what I was going to say as well, if you don't know something, ask and just be like, I want to learn. Recently, I mean, at least what I figured was more than my classes, I was learning more in labs. And then I went up to my professor, and her research interests don't align with mine, but I feel like I learned from her. So I was like, if there's anything that you can teach me, or if any project that I do, let me know, because I want to learn. So that takes you a long way. And when you're working on your research, please use the citation tool. That is like teaching for me. So when you said tool, I feel like that was what came to mind.
I think the two things I want to add, and I might be taking a little bit from Atmika and Aradhana on this. So I was thinking of what Atmika said, like when you have like your research team, right? Sometimes you think you're up against each other, but you could really get from their pool of like what they're interested in, though you're doing like this similar or different research, right? Somebody else is like really good in like stats, or somebody's really good in like doing a lit review and finding the articles you need. And I would say networking helps. Like you really, sometimes we think we have to do everything on our own. You can collaborate, you can get articles out, like as Lopa said, publications are like, that's your currency type of thing, right? And so if you collaborate, you could just like build on each other's strengths, and you build that like kind of like an academic, what do you say, camaraderie that goes a long way. So networking, yes. Oh gosh, I forgot Aradhana what you said earlier because it struck a thought in me, but it'll come back. But I'll stop with that.
Is it asking for help or the citation tool?
Oh yeah, no, it'll come back to me.
Very nice what you all mentioned. I want to be a bit more precise in the way that one skill that I developed by attending a conference. Forgot the name of the professor. Very cute guy, old guy with his, typical what you would believe a PhD scholar or professor would be, shabby hair, thick glasses. And I remember him telling us 3 papers a day, begin with that. Start with reading 3 research papers a day. Try to do that. 3 became a bit more eventually. And the second thing is learning how to write academically. So one thing that he taught us was you read a paper, you read the introduction, cover it, try to write it yourself in your own words. So in that way, you're trying to get straight away from plagiarism in a way, and understanding the language of the article. So I believe reading and writing are the key skills that we researchers have to develop. And 2, trying to manage sleep. I think that's a skill. Being able to, sleep in 8 hours or 4 hours. So it's a skill. Yeah, nice.
If I can quickly add, I remember what I wanted to say. So I mentioned about working with a professor whose interests in lineup, right? But you learn something from them nevertheless. So I think no time spent on working with people is ever like that, because you always learn something from them. So there will be a work ethic or a methodology, or just like how they conduct themselves. Because if you're doing a PhD, you more likely want to be in academia, right? So different skills, like with community engagement, with extension work, with research, like how do they talk to students, or how do they talk to like funding agents, right? These are like key skills which you can learn from different people. And so you might not get along with people all the time, but it's important to identify what you can learn from somebody and go with that like learner mindset.
I think that these are like a lot of skills that are never spoken about, even generally in any kind of job. A lot of the skills that you guys have mentioned are pretty applicable in all kind of situations. To be honest, I think it's very important that to hear it and know it from someone who's in the field, though. Thank you for that. So we just have one last question. So the current COVID-related issues, have you heard of any other methods of collecting data? Like, are your professors, your supervisors, your academicians, are they welcoming online collection of data?
I can jump on that real quick. So, when we do research with people, right, a lot of times we think we actually need to meet the people we're trying to know about. And there's a lot of public secondary data that's available, data sets that are, available for us. That you can access, and you can basically you submit a proposal saying that, hey, this is the piece, like, from this huge data set. Like, if you wanted to see say women's shopping choices, for instance, right? You could probably reach like a big retailer and be like, hey, can I have like a piece of your data to see how like 1,000 women have shopped during Christmas, right? And you could easily use that. So though it's still very much applicable, you have these other sources of getting the data. I've also had like colleagues where if they did it in like different areas where they're not able to reach because of COVID, they have teamed up with other researchers in the area in who are already in the local area, and kind of like gotten that like institutional review board approval, saying that this is the step we're doing together, so I'm here doing a piece of it and this person's doing the legwork for me. And we're accounting for that, like with difference of experiences, or like what our strengths are, and then mentioning that in your study, right? So yes, in short, yes, there are ways to do it.
100%. I think, Jesse, you are right there. And also, I think, especially with the pandemic, when it started out, people who were just about to go for their fieldwork had to drastically change their method of data collection because it just wasn't possible to do so otherwise. But I mean, we also have to be mindful right now that we are kind of coming towards, a situation where you will be able to go out. So whatever is your choice of data collection, you can still put it out there. But yes, there are newer modes of data collection that's coming up. There are more acceptable modes by universities. It's just that you'll probably have to get it approved by your ethics committees and the very many committees that you need your approvals from, and then take it forward from there, really. So but you don't have to really worry in terms of what is your data collection method per se right now. Get on with your research and then figure out, by the time you get there, I'm sure we'll be in our endemic phase anyway. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I think with this, we don't have any more questions. So I would first of all like to thank all of you for very patiently answering all of the questions that were there. And, the experiences that you've shared, the examples, I think those are going to leave a long-lasting impression because, it's so much nicer to hear it from someone who's in the field. You feel a lot more connected to them, and it has a lot stronger impact. So thank you for first of all joining in. Thank you for sharing all of your experiences, your challenges, your words of wisdom, and thank you for patiently listening to all the questions and answering them. And thank you, an extra thank you and a huge gratitude to Vishal for being here and guiding us through it with all the questions and concerns. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we really hope you recover very soon. And thank you for all of our viewers for staying there, for listening in, and for asking questions. It's been amazing to have you guys here as well. And with that, I would just like you to remind you to tune in next week for a week 4, where we'll be having EAP counselors joining us at 6 p.m. IST. So please do tune in again for another panel discussion. And once again, thank you everyone, and I hope you have a great weekend ahead. Thank you everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks each of you for this fascinating conversation. Yeah, hope to see you all soon sometime.
Sorry, carry on, Nisha.
No, I was just saying thanks for this fascinating conversation. Just hope that we'll see each other face to face soon. Yeah, that'll be nice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a great evening, and some of you have a great day. I think couple of you can do. Yeah, the others a great evening. Yes, bye bye.
I want to wish good luck to anyone who's wondering whether they should or shouldn't, or who are already in the field. So good luck to each of you here and everyone on the internet.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.